Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Before we start, I'd just like to say the reason I haven't been uploading as much is I'm back to school, so I just haven't had the time to really film, upload, edit, all that. So I apologize for the inconvenience, but in today's video, we're going to be taking a little different route from what I've done in the past. We're going to be working on this Athearn Blue Box SDP40. It is a little different than your typical Blue Box SD40 because usually there's a little V shape here on the end, but it's got this little steam generator to help heat the passenger trains. So I'm going to take it over to my little test track now, and we're going to see what it does when we give it some power. So here we are on our little test track, and as I said before, this is an Athearn Blue Box locomotive. I picked it up from one of my friends who got it as a gift from his train club, but he decided he really didn't want it, so he sold it to me. And here we're going to try and give it a little power, see what it does. So I see we got a light in there, and that the motor's humming, but it's not moving. So that's a good sign, meaning the motor's getting power, it's not seized or anything, which would be a huge problem if it were. And no one ever really wants to deal with a seized motor, because usually it is pretty gone, to put it easily. So we're going to get this thing back on the bench, and we're going to crack it open and see what we can do for it. Here at the bench, I'm going to be doing some quick taking apart a locomotive inspection, which always starts with taking your locomotive shell off. Now, these specific locomotives, they are kind of problematic with that because they have 4 pins instead of the usual 2 that hold the shell on. And it's not like the newer Blue Boxes where they have the clips on the inside of the fuel tank. It's just the problem of prying them off, which can be a little tricky trying to get all 4 of them off. As you can see, it's hard to get the prying tool. I know it's not the best, but I don't have any screwdrivers laying around right now. So you can see it just keeps snapping right back into place. So what you typically want to do is I like to start in the back and put my finger in there to jam it. Then you move to the front one. You can see now that the shell is half off. You just do the same on the other side. And would you look at that? Shell is off of the body. We're going to set that aside now. And this is what we're working with underneath. Typical Blue Box. You've got the 2 flywheels. All of its parts are here, thankfully. You can see your light right here connected to the main pickup, which I'm not a huge fan of, which I might get replaced with a wire later. Who knows? Let's see how ambitious I'm feeling. But you can see you got your big motor here. I believe Athearn used 5 poles. Correct me if I'm wrong. But they've got these 2 massive flywheels to help with navigating poor electrical conductivity spots. But then coming from there, you can see here's our drive shaft. There's 2 of those because these are all-wheel pickup, all-wheel drives. Makes them very reliable. And you can see I can twist the motor by hand and the locomotive scoots forward a little bit. So that's good to know that our motor isn't seized. So we're going to start doing the basic teardown of this locomotive now. What I always like to start with is this big overhead electrical pickup bar. You can see it's just held on there, and these get bent pretty easily. The reason a lot of guys will replace them, solder a wire to right here and here. And then one here, and then one here, but I'm not too sure about that yet. I like to keep the locomotives as original as possible. So we're going to set that aside. And next we're going to take a look at, you can see you've still got your spinning parts. That doesn't really affect any of the motor except for the pickups. But what I like to do next is try and pry these drive shafts off. I'm not using the sharp side because you don't want to accidentally cut the plastic. But you can see there's little ball joints here, and you just push on those, and your flywheel drive shaft assembly now disconnected from the truck. And the truck, as it is, should still not be able to move freely because there's a worm gear in there. So it means we got all the parts in here. We're going to do the same for the front. Alright. Now comes the tricky part. There's these little covers on here that hold the worm gear in. It's always tricky just to get these pried off easily. These are on there pretty good because Athearn decided that they wanted to have strong connections back in the day. I mean, usually you don't have problems with these locomotives, but when you do, they can be easy, but some aren't really designed to be that user-friendly. As you can see, I'm having some problems trying to get this off. So I'm gonna look for a screwdriver, and it's been about 3 minutes now, and I managed to pry both of these covers off. You can see nothing special, just designed to clip over the worm gear, which you can see you can now take out. And this one's pretty much got no grease, no oil on it, so that might be a problem. But what's not a problem is I have some Labelle 106 and 108 here, which I'm going to be putting on here, hopefully improving its performance. Now just take this front worm gear out and put that with the other one. So now you have full access. You can lift the truck out of the frame, and now that you have no worm gear, your wheels can all spin freely. And just by the sound of it, you can see that, yeah, there really is no grease, no nothing in there. So we're going to be doing a teardown of each truck, and we're going to be getting them some grease, getting them nice and taken care of. And you can see this one, pretty much the same story. And I also tend to take your drive shafts out, and I'll always just drop a little bit of oil into the pivoting parts. So I'm going to set these all aside, and we're going to jump right into getting these trucks taken apart and get a little show you a little guide how to do that. So with the trucks, Athearn decided to make these pretty easy to work on, maintain, all that. So just as with the worm gear cover, I'll show you both trucks have these little clips on the bottom that you can take something. Now a screwdriver is typically too thick, so what you gotta do is cram something. I'm just using a hobby knife very carefully, and you gotta try and spread them like that. You can see now the clip is starting to lift off there. Gotta do the same on the other side. And if you mess up and accidentally break it, you can always go on Athearn's website and order more, because Athearn actually cares about their customers so much that they still offer every part you can imagine for your old blue box locomotives. They even sell detailing kits for them, since, you know, blue boxes weren't really designed to be the most accurate models. And as I said before with the shell, these things are a little tricky to get off because they keep snapping on when I pry the other side off. And there we go. Just like that, you can see our cover's off. And there's absolutely no grease on there, which means this thing, ooh, she's probably been run pretty dry. So now that that's out, we're going to want to pry these side covers off. Little detail bits. And they're actually, some of them are part of the frame. Let's see, get these wheels out. And being a 6-axle, you'll have 3 axles per truck. And let's see. This one doesn't really seem to be cooperating. There we go. So all 3 wheel sets are removed. And you can see there's another clip right here holding the trucks together. We'll remove that, put that by the other one. And now we have access to all the gears inside. So you can see that those are pretty dry in there. You can also hopefully see there's little brass bearings here, here, and here. And that's what allows the wheels to roll pretty freely. So what I'm going to do is set this all to the side again. And I'm going to give it a little oil, a little grease. So here we've got my Label 108 synthetic oil. And this is going to be dropped into those bearings. Give a nice healthy taste of oil, all 3 bearings. That's where our axle actually rolls, and there's not much you can do to work it in yet. But now what we're going to do is we're going to use some heavy-duty grease, some Label 106. This stuff, you can order it off Amazon. That's how I got this. I got the grease and the oil for 17 bucks off Amazon. So you can see we got our gears. We're going to want to get this grease in the gear. Just kind of get it in there, and now you're just going to want to spin your gears around a bit. You can see the grease starting to work its way in, always a good thing. You're going to want to add a little more here and there until you feel happy. Some guys, they'll say, you need to grease your locomotive once a year, and that's what they do. Other guys, hey, I don't grease my locomotives. But when it's this bad, you don't want the gears to grind themselves down just by running it. And just like that, you can see we got a nice, healthy coat of grease on there. So that half is ready to go. We're going to just take the other side. But this one doesn't have any gears on it. Just designed to hold these ones in. We're just going to give all 3 bearings a taste. You see our wheel set seems to be pretty attracted to the freshly done truck. But now that this is out of the way, the next thing to do is, you see our wheel sets here? They should be almost silver. These are almost black and dirty, which means they've been run a lot or they've been left alone to oxidize. And judging at the state of this locomotive, it was probably put in a box and just let sit for, well, who knows how long. So for cleaning these, I'm going to show you what to do in a couple seconds here. So there's multiple methods of how to clean your wheel sets. One, there's a track bright or a bright boy, whatever you call it. It's an abrasive surface that you just scrape on the top of the metal. I don't like working with it because it doesn't reach the full wheel. So what I'll typically do is I'll take a Q-tip, any old Q-tip. Then we've got this hydrogen peroxide. Anything works, really. But we're going to take that and get it on the tip of the Q-tip. And just start rubbing the rim of our wheel with it until it starts hopefully lifting the dirt off. Now this isn't perfect, but it works enough to clean the wheels so that the locomotive can at least run. And it's a time-consuming process, as with most things repairing model trains. You can see it's a little cleaner on there. A little more reflection. That's, all dirt. You can see there's some of the stuff that's coming off there, pretty gross. So you're going to want to do this. I'm not going to do it all on camera. But I'm going to do all 3 wheel sets for this truck before getting it put back together. And I'm going to use the same method of hydrogen peroxide, Q-tips, and a little time. See you then. So after about 10 minutes of work, I went through them all, got them all nice and cleaned up. All 3 wheel sets, nice and silvery again. So it's time to reinstall them into the piece here that we worked on. So it's really simple. Some people try to do it just like this. They just put the wheels on now. But it's really going to help if you kind of pin both the frames together and just hold them apart like a butterfly like this. And then you just kind of roughly drop them in. Make sure they're all lined up with the bearings. And this is the tricky part, getting them back together. But you can see, nice and rolling again. So we're going to want to take this little clip I took off earlier. We're going to snap it on right back on the back there. We're going to flip it over. One of our wheels came out. Put that truck cover back on. And there's one truck maintenance. There you go. For the other one, it is identical. You're going to want to repeat the process. It takes a lot of time, I know, but I'm not going to be filming that other one for the sake of not wasting your time. But we'll be right back when I get that one done. So now, after about 15 minutes, I've gone ahead. Both trucks are ready to go. So that's one less thing you got to do. Always make sure to do that. If you don't, it might cause problems later down the line. So the next major thing you're going to want to take a look at is I have the entire frame motor assembly here. I don't have any of the spare motor mounts that Athearn used with me. I don't want to go out and buy some, so I always leave the motor on the frame and just work on it that way. But as you can see, motor's still spinning freely. Nice with those heavy flywheels. But always something you're going to want to check out is you can see there's little commutator plates. In between them, there's gaps. And now I don't have any screwdrivers thin enough to fit in here. So you're just going to want to take something thin, like a hobby knife, and you can see there's a little black gunk that came out of there. That can cause the commutator plates to almost act as if they're one. And that'll cause your motor not to turn. So I've cleaned all of them up now. There's 5 of them. This is a typical 5-pole motor. Something I always like to do is just take a power pack. And how Athearn's work is there's the frame, and then there's this top part. Half the power goes through the frame, half goes through the top. And now I'm going to ground it, see if it spins. You're going to get anything out of you? There we go. It's a little funky right now, but there we go. We got the motor to work. So that's always a good sign. Now the next thing, much like those wheels, what you're going to want to do, take some hydrogen peroxide. And if you noticed, you can see part of the commutator, nice and shiny. The other part's got a big black streak on it. Those are burn marks from the electricity. So you don't need to get it perfect. You just need to take your Q-tip and just kind of rub off. You can see it's a little better. Nothing too crazy. And you're just going to want to do that for all 5 plates. Nothing special about it, just using some hydrogen peroxide. And it gives you better electrical conductivity, which is always what you want when working with your trains. And just like that, not a huge difference, but that's what you get it to work. We're gonna try and give it to a little more power, see if she runs any better. So I know it's not the best controller, but for now I'm just using a lifelike, just an old lifelike controller. Ooh, look at that. So it's sounding bad just because these little receptacles for they're just for the drive shafts. Those are flapping around, hitting on this pickup for the light. But as you can see, now it didn't just randomly stop in the middle, which means motor's good to go, but some guys will tell you not to, other guys will. It's really a whole thing of preference. There's some bearings that the motors spin on. I always like to just give them the tiniest drop of oil just to help reduce friction a little. And if you want, it's not a big deal, but if it gets on your commutator, sometimes it'll cause problems with, it'll just make it all black and marked up again. Some guys will say, yeah, we don't want that. All up to you though, and it doesn't matter. So I'm gonna do a little off-camera work on here, getting this thing, try and get it back together. Something I almost forgot to mention is with your worm gear. You can see it's got these little brass cubes on it. Those are the bearings. You're gonna want to get a little oil onto them too. Both sides. Both on each truck. There's 2 per truck. You're always want to do that. So now I've gotten the front truck back in, all secured, everything's good. Little thing you're always going to want to check, just take the truck, pivot it around, make sure it's not catching on anything. And everything here seems to be good. You're going to want to spin the motor a bit. You can see motor spins a lot nicer now. And I realized I probably should show you how to put it back together. It's really just a reverse process of taking it apart. You're going to take your truck, which should be all nice and lubricated, cleaned. There's a little bolster that sits on. There's a hole that this rests in that allows it to pivot like this. Once you get that lined up, you're going to want to take your worm gear and drive shaft assembly, which I've gone ahead and put together. It's just for the ease of assembly. And you can see on the drive shaft right here, it's circular, but there's a little key on it, which helps lock it in place. Because otherwise, if it was a circle on a circle drive shaft, what it would do is just spin. It wouldn't transfer anything to the truck, and your locomotive wouldn't be a motive. It would just kind of sit there and rev up, not doing anything. So now you're gonna, really hard to see, and I know I'm not doing the best, but I'm also trying to get this fixed up. You're gonna want to get your worm gear in there. And the only problem with doing this is it's got square bearings and square holes, which means you can't just throw it in all willy-nilly and it'll be fine. They're pretty fine to get in there. But once you do, they're in. Now you're just going to take your cover, and bam, just like that, you got a completed subframe. All there's left to do now is take your giant power bar, which I know it's not the cleanest, but it's got enough exposed area where it should be good. And now let me see. I know there's two ways to put it on. You can see there's a longer side, slightly longer and slightly shorter. The longer side goes towards the back and the shorter one goes towards the front. And then, like I said before, it just snaps in. You're gonna want to get it under these little L hooks here. And you can see that's how it gets contact, through here and under here. So now I'm going to take my power pack. We're gonna do that. And just give it a little quick power test. Oh boy. Did I do something wrong? Ooh. So after about another hour of fiddling around with what's going on, I found out one of the rear bearings was locked up. It was corroded onto the shaft. So I cleaned that up, and now we got a locomotive that can run on its own power. But sometimes it does blow this old lifelike controller. But it's an old lifelike controller. It's been having issues lately. But yeah, there you have it. We've got our locomotive all tuned up. I'm going to get some knuckle couplers on it. We got some line around here for it. Nice new pair. But let's get this shell on and give you the final shot of this locomotive. So, as an overview, you can see it's our locomotive here. It's got all the little detail parts. The headlights and the little rear tail lights here, those are kind of messed up. They need to be the other way around. But as you can see, the front handrails are all there. All the side handrails, but it's missing the whole rear set. And then it's missing a stanchion right there. Otherwise, this thing's in pretty good shape. And I've heard from a friend that you can swap a SD45 shell onto here too, which I might look into just getting a shell, just so I can switch it around every now and then. But yeah, if you watch this, I hope this helps with fixing your Athearn Blue Box locomotives up. Thanks for watching, and we will see you around.